Okay, Sarah, this question is coming to you. Did the version of the Oregon Timber Trail you rode meet your expectations? Which variations of the route would you choose to ride again? If you ride again.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So the short answer is yes. I think yeah, there was because we looked there wasn't a lot compared to a lot of other single track mountain bike races, especially the Arizona Trail in Colorado. Like didn't look like a lot of people were doing this one. If you like surfed the web and like poked around a little bit, you could tell like there was some issues with especially that first section up to Chemult. So after that, I would say I don't know, everything was like smooth sailing. But then we had some like we didn't do the big one after Oak Ridge, so. Um, but yeah, so I was going into it. I thought I could finish the single track version I think I had like 14 days. Um, I would say, yeah, I think I thought it was going to be on the harder end of things that I had done. But like, I knew that hiker biking I was going to be pushing my bike a lot. Oh, did someone mute me? Or am I still good,
No,
Joe?
you're good.
Okay. All right, cool. So a little thing popped up. But yeah, the first 300 miles definitely met my expectation. And I was just pleased. I think the first day I was like aiming for a certain distance and I was like, I hit it. And then that was great. And then once I got through the first day, once I got through the first half of the first day, I was like, all right, as long as I keep moving forward, this is fine. Just like do the things that I know that like I like sleeping, so just making sure I get enough sleep. Water. I was probably carrying too much stuff. I err on the side of carrying too much stuff, especially at the start line. I was like looking around and I was like, oof, I'm carrying a lot more stuff than some people. So yeah, it met my expectations is the short version, and I already forgot the second part of the question actually. Oh, I would do it again. Yeah, I would want to do this version again. I think probably the other panelists too. I don't know, it was a little bit bittersweet, I think, when we finished. And it was even started being bittersweet once we realized, like, I think we were relieved that we kind of had an out because of the fire of the section after Oak Ridge. But yeah, it was just like, in some ways, I felt like I didn't do it. And then the whole, like, oh, the race. And I was like, am I racing? I don't know. I'm not really doing it. So, Um, so
Mhm.
yeah, that part was bittersweet. So I would want to. It's one of the few routes where that I've done that I like somewhat plan on doing again.
Gotcha. Okay. Chris or Garrett, anything to add to that?
I mean, I think I'll echo a lot of what Sarah said. Like coming into this, I was looking for a route similar to the Arizona Trail, Colorado Trail, like single track oriented, like kind of remote, and something that was going to challenge me. And I think this route did that. In particular, that first 300 miles, it got a lot more chill after that. Absolutely met my expectations. Absolutely want to do it again at some point. And to Sarah's point, there's some of that single track that we didn't get to do, bunch grass, the pyramids. So definitely have plans sometime in the future to come back to it.
Gotcha. Well, any sections which are just like I never want to see that part of the trail again?
I mean, for me, I really struggled on Yamsey, and there's this section on like the Winter Rim Trail, which was pretty brutal. But like that's part of the trip for me, right? Like suffering through some of those sections. So even though it was hard, like that's part of the appeal for me. So I think everything that I struggled through, I would definitely want to do again. So.
Gotcha. Excellent. Good to hear. Garrett, do you echo that?
I
Anything
definitely
else? Yeah.
can concur with a lot of what's been said. It exceeded my expectations in a variety of ways. Um, this is definitely one of the more unique things I've ever ridden a bike on overall. It seems endless. It goes on and on. Um, and it definitely was hard, like I expected it to be, but it was way more interesting. And there was a point where I was like, I haven't seen a store, a hotel, anything in 4.5 days. It's pretty unusual you can do that in the United States these days with full on riding. It wasn't just riding 4 hours a day. I was doing 10 to 12 hours a day on my bike. And
Hmm.
that is something very unique that the Oregon Timber Trail offered me that I just didn't think I was anything like that left in the United States, on a biking perspective, at least. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it for sure.
Excellent.
And being able to have some of those gravel routes as bailout options was a really comforting thing for me because I wasn't sure exactly where I stood on the Oregon Timber Trail and its difficulty. So just having that gravel route, like I know if things get weird, I can hop on the gravel route and I can make up some miles, skip some stuff, which I wouldn't love to do, but it's an option and I really appreciate.
Yeah, I imagine the isolation out there is pretty oppressive in some spots, especially early on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I definitely want to ride it again. I want to
Okay,
see how
so that's
fast I could go.
that's 3 votes for a redo, so that's good.
Yeah.
It'd be different. It's like, yeah, I'm not touching this place again. That'd be a different story. All right. I don't think we got any questions on the chat. Have we, Jeffrey?
Joe,
Doesn't
can I
mean.
just add one more thing about that?
Please, yeah.
So like if it isn't clear, like we all left with the Grand Depart. And this was for me, this is my second Grand Depart. So I did the Cross Washington ride. I did that Grand Depart in 2024. And this was my second Grand Depart. And it was really cool to do this ride with the Grand Depart because I got to spend time with Garrett and Sarah. And like Sarah was always just like a little bit in front of us. And it gave me kind of like something to chase a little bit. But I think that part of like, would I do this again? Yes, but also I would want to do the Grand Depart again. I think that adds to the enrichment of this experience. So if you've never done a Grand Depart before, it's something I'd recommend.
Gotcha. Okay, we got to move on to the next topic. A question did come in and on what types of bikes you rode. If you could answer that and follow up questions, that'd be great. All right, we're going to move on to the next topic, which is when to start timing your ride. The trail can be ridden from about mid-June to late October. In most years, depending on the snow level. If you start too soon, you'll hit snow. Start late, and wildfire season picks up. No matter what, you need to be flexible with your plans. And mosquitoes are ubiquitous throughout the riding season. Maybe not in late October, but pretty much the rest of the time. So, Chris, this question's coming to you. How much did weather and fire conditions influence your ride? We know that you didn't have much of a choice as to when to start, but if you did, would you choose a different month to start if you were to do it again, or when you do it again?
Yeah, for sure. So, firstly, it impacted our ride a ton. We left during kind of like a heat wave. So it was really hot for that first section. There's a lot of pushing in that section, a lot of elevation. So like that made the first day really hard. Sarah commented she like had a mileage goal and she hit it. I had a mileage goal and I did not hit it. And it's like I immediately fell behind schedule. So just because the heat, right? So that impacted us. And then at the end of day 2 for us, maybe it wasn't day 2. I'm sorry. It was that when we were riding in a tumult, there was a storm and it ended up creating some fires in the area. So that dramatically impacted the trail for us. So luckily, Chip, who was an amazing race director, was kind of planning these reroutes. And so Sarah kind of alluded to us having to skip bunch grass. So that was kind of the first detour that we had to go around because of wildfires. And then there was 2 other sort of significant detours, I would say. One through the Pyramid Fires or around the Pyramid Fires. And then there was another one at Kingsley Reservoir. So yeah, like every day we were kind of looking at watch duty because of weather and fire implications and just trying to figure out like, hey, is this still going to go? It very significantly impacted our ride. Now, as far as when I would go, if I were to do it again, I do think that end of June, middle of July is kind of a sweet spot. I think we got unlucky with the fire, but I think that's just the reality of riding in the Pacific Northwest these days in the summer as the wildfires. So to some extent, it's just luck of the draw. If you go too early in the season, you're going to find a little bit of snow. When we were going up Crane Mountain on the first day, there was just like a tiny little patch. I would rather deal with a little bit of pushing through snow and less wildfire risk. And so I'd vote for like middle of June to middle of July is kind of the sweet spot.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. Sarah, Garrett, any additions to that?
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with what Chris said. Yeah, I would also rather just push through snow rather than, because it was like the first detour around Bunchgrass, I was like, okay, but we're going to like make it through the rest. And then once we got Chip's text about the Pyramid Fires, then it was really like, at that point I was like, well, I'm going to sleep like 8 hours a night because like it's going to be fine. This is going by it's going to go by so fast. And then like the last one too, because then I think a lot of us were looking forward to like the single track heading into Hood River, and then like the morning of to find out that like we weren't even going to make it on that. It kind of, at that point, I was kind of like still kind of proud of myself a little bit of like, I was like, oh, I'm going to make it, and like nothing bad happened. But it was also like, oh man, it kind of piled on. So I also, and it looked like it was the year to like do the whole thing. Cause I think by the end of June, cause it had been like a little colder, I feel like end of June, things were looking perfect until that heat wave hit. And then it was a little bit, I think it was a bit like waiting and kind of seeing what would happen. So I think like end of June maybe, or early August early July, like before mid-July might be the best option.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Garrett, anything to add?
Not too much, really. I mean, I'm not totally from Oregon. I haven't spent a
Yeah.
lot of time out that way, so it's hard to call. But I know for sure our year I would have liked like 1 week earlier, but you just never know. You can't really
Right.
plan those types of things, and that fire got crazy fast that year.
Yeah, and
So
it's going to keep on getting worse. So thanks. Hey, Chip, I want to ask you about the gravel version, and if someone's planning on riding the gravel routes. Um, we have a grand depart, I think June 28th. Can you speak to any more about when that might be available to ride?
There's a very deep snowpack in Southern Oregon this year, and unless it warms up quickly, it probably won't be till late June before those areas in Southern Oregon melt out. If a person was going to start from the north, might find it better because we got a below average snowpack up north. So going north to south might make sense for this year. But in general, I think the gravel route could be ridden a couple of weeks before the trail version, just because it doesn't hit so many high spots.
Gotcha. Okay. Excellent. All right. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. So, Jeffrey, I don't know if we got any questions on that topic yet.
Now we've got a question from Anthony Bruno, and it's what's the longest gap between food and water resupply, which may be in a different section of our show.
Yeah, we'll hit that up. I think that's the last section, but yeah, that's a key one. We're spending some time on that, so we'll just keep on moving then, and stay ahead of schedule, and hopefully get some more open Q&A time. Okay, getting to and from the route, or to the start and back home. The route starts in isolated parts of Oregon and passes through sparsely populated areas as it winds northward. Most people get there from Portland to Klamath Falls, which is about a 5-hour drive. Then Klamath Falls to Lakeview, which is another 2 hours. And then from Lakeview to the Deep Creek Campground, that's another hour. The gravel version does start in Lakeview, so that makes it a little bit easier. There is no easy way to get to Lakeview. You could take a train from Portland to Klamath Falls, but then you're still 2 hours away. You can ride to Lakeview, so that's about another 150 miles, I think. There are no car rental shops in Lakeview, but there is a U-Haul. So if you wanted to rent a truck, maybe find some friends and rent a truck, you can drop it off there. So that is an option. Another option is to hire an outfitter. We know of only one that is doing it right now. Cedar Keys runs Oregon Territory Outfitters. They're out of Mount Hood. We'll put his information in the chat so you can reach out to him if you need to get a shuttle. And then once you get to Hood River, you can ride back to Portland, which is only about another 100 miles up and over Mount Hood, or you can take a local bus. They'll get you and your bike back. So Garrett, this question's coming at you. How difficult was it for you to arrange transportation to get to the start and back home? Any suggestions for folks or pro tips?
what I ended up doing was I took the Amtrak from Portland. So I flew into Portland. There's a bike assembly station in the Portland airport. So if you are flying with a bike, it's actually really convenient. You can put your bike together in the airport. Stayed with a buddy, and then I took the train down. And I opted to ride my bike from Klamath Falls over to Lakeview. And then because I was a part of the Grand Depart and I registered as a tourer, not really a racer, it's not much of a distinction realistically in the eyes of the participants. So I thought that was a really nice atmosphere at the start line. Um, so I rode that distance and it took me about 2 days, maybe a day and a half of some pretty hot pavement highway riding. Not necessarily recommended, but if you're balling on a budget like I am, that's a pretty good solution. And then Chip was nice enough to give me a ride down to the start, which is the power in numbers that comes from the Grand Depart, which also helps is you have some resources. There's a couple variations of trail as well that they have in the trail notes that you could start from some other places if you were looking into that. So give the trail notes a good look. There's tons of useful information there. That was really helpful for me. I did a lot of reading ahead of time. And then hopping with the Oregon Territory Outfitters with Cedar, that's a good option. I know that Sarah and Chris went that route. And it's a pretty affordable price overall for the amount of distance you get to travel with a bike and all your gear and everything else. And it just takes the headache out of booking a train. Trains are always late. Sometimes there's not space for bikes, always. Sometimes that sells out. And then finding accommodation late night in Klamath Falls is a bit of a tricky thing too. So I utilize some things like warm showers along the way, just kind of riding on the highway and dealing with that. And then once I got up to Hood River, there's an amazing bus, the Cat bus. I think it was, I can't exactly remember how much it was, but it was under $30. Bike and me dropped off back in Portland, super simple. So I think getting to and from the trail overall seems really complex on paper. If you just do a little bit of research, you can find some really, oh, it's only $10. That's an amazing deal. That's unbelievable.
It's
You
cheaper
can,
than driving.
yeah, it's cheaper than driving straight up. So you can find some pretty good solutions, and especially if you're going to take part in the Grand Depart, there's some good options out there. I would not necessarily recommend riding that stretch from Klamath Falls. You can get a cheaper option with Cedar and the Oregon Territory Outfitters from Klamath Falls over to Lakeview. So I would probably opt for best case, take the Amtrak down, hop in with Cedar, ride the last of the way, and then you're there. So I think overall, although it's quite remote, there's a lot of options coming together. You just got to do a little bit of research, and there's tons of valuable information in the trail notes.
Gotcha. Excellent. Good info. You do make some new friends on the Amtrak though, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you do meet a guy named Eric who now is on the board here helping
Right.
out, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And you do have an opportunity to see some other bike packers along the way. And if you want to go just see a guy with a bike and chat him up, maybe they'll help out the trail in the long run.
Yeah. So Chris, Sarah, you two used Cedar, huh? That worked out well.
Yeah, one thing that I'd recommend for folks that are looking at doing this, join the Oregon Timber Trail Facebook group. So like I was tweaking, trying to figure out like how am I going to get here? I was like looking at the U-Haul option. I was like thinking about doing what Garrett was doing, like taking the train down. And then all of a sudden I had options. So there's a guy coming down from like up in Seattle area, and so he was willing to carpool. And then I found out about Cedar. You might be able to find somebody else who's interested in doing the route and sort of arrange some kind of carpool situation. And that could help with some of the logistics of trying to figure out how you get there. But yeah, I ended up taking the van with Cedar.
Gotcha. All right.
And I took the van too. I had an Amtrak ticket booked, and then I was like, I had no plan from Klamath Falls, and then it was like, I don't know how much before the race, but yeah, the shuttle was awesome. Just like alleviated a lot of this planning stress. Also, you got to like become best friends with everyone in the shuttle before starting the race. And it basically felt like summer camp for adults, like the whole day before. Like you're like, oh yeah, we're going to the beach or whatever with all the other children.
So did Garrett Cedar offer rides like from Portland, or was it mainly like from Klamath Falls to the trailhead? Or do you know?
It was from I think there was options. So he gave, it's like, I think it was like $200 to get a ride from Portland. And then it was like $100 from Klamath Falls, I think, because there was another person that hopped on the bus at Klamath Falls.
And just to be clear, I'll plug Cedar's shop. He does this for lots of different things. He puts on other tours. if you want to do a custom tour, reach out to him. He's a great dude and a good trail worker to boot. I don't think we got any questions on getting to from, did we, Jeffrey?
We did not, no.
We did not. Okay. We're going to get to the meatier parts. This is actually on the trail a little bit more. This next topic is staying the course, navigation. As I mentioned earlier, the trail is a collection of, or the route, I should say, is a collection of roads and trails, single track, double track, gravel, and pavement. Only a portion of that is well marked. The route does include a couple of trail sections through recent burns that are now overgrown with brush, where it's hard to even see the trail tread. With necessity of making choices and changing courses, especially with wildfires, you really do need a GPS unit. You're not going to, I mean, you could do it without it, but you want a GPS unit. We did complete, the Oregon Timber Trail Alliance completed a project last year where we put up aluminum tags marking the route, but at 700 miles long, we didn't have 7,000 tags. So they're up there, but you can't really use them for navigation. You can access the navigation files for the trail through our website. Each section or tier of the main trail and its variations has a link to Ride with GPS where you can download those files. The Oregon Timber Trail Alliance will try to help some reroute recommendations throughout the riding season, like the ones that might arise during active wildfires. But your safety and your route is your own responsibility. Check out the updates and detour section of our website for reroute information. And if you have not done so yet, Chris had mentioned the Watch Duty app. That thing is fabulous. Download it, get familiar with it, invest in it. It's been great. It gives you a lot of peace of mind. Also suggest you familiarize yourself with the U.S. Forest Service websites on the trail and area closures. Obviously, there's not going to be anything closed right now, but if you get yourself familiar where that information is available, it'll save you some headaches when you're trying to reach it on the trail. Okay, Sarah, back to you on this one. I want to ask you, how difficult was it for you to navigate on the Oregon Timber Trail? What would you recommend to others to help stay on course?
I mean, looking back on it right now, so I would say it's just really that sections of the first 300 miles where there's just not a lot of traffic, and there's like the really big burn areas that did get really overgrown. I think most of us knew, at least like it was kind of what I expected. It was what I expected, but it's, living it is different. And then I think the main thing is like, I definitely lost the trail side of Wahoo that I had on my computer, and then I had the route downloaded on my phone on a couple of different apps to like look at the details and stuff and like water points and things like that. So I think going into it, like I had the expectation that I would, and on other routes I've done, like I've gone off route, and I think as long as you know that, the route should be, like 100 yards that way, and you're like, you just kind of head towards it and you zigzag back and forth. So that happened a lot. But it happened like, it would happen very suddenly to be like, all right, yeah, this trail is great. Like, and there was parts where, one of the advantages of not being in the front is tire tracks were quite entertaining to follow. So I think I was like the sixth or seventh person back, and especially in some of the burn areas, there with that like green, I don't know what kind of plant that is, but it was like, it's just the trails going and you're like kind of know the trails, and then it's like not obvious. I mean, you can see it on your GPS, but it's just not obvious at all. And you can actually, there were points where I saw tire tracks, like one tire track went that way, one went that way, and one went that way. So that was kind of entertaining, but also reassuring because you're like, all right, other people are like not on the trail either. And, especially, where I was, at least like in the group, I was like, someone else is like up there ahead of me, bushwhacking off the trail as well. So that someone was saying earlier, like it was kind of an isolating route, but definitely the Grand Depart made it way less isolating because I knew there was like 6 people in front of me and like 6 people behind me. So that was kind of cool compared to like routes that you just kind of do on your own. So coming back to the question, I think, just have the expectation that you're going to lose the GPS, like you're going to go off the route. And that's totally normal, and you're just going to be bushwhacking for a little while, and you'll get back on the route. There was only one point where I really I was like very upset about the situation. I think it was after the Chumalt River, the river that goes day 2. Can I get the name of, no, the other river, Chihuahua River. Yeah, Chihuahuan River. So you cross the road, and it looks like the trail, there's like a trail that goes right along the side of the road. And at some point, it starts going up. And at least for me, it was I just totally blew through it. And all of a sudden, I was just in like long grass, and I thought I was following a trail, and I was following a deer trail. And there's like these really pokey things that just like get stuck everywhere. And that was the only point where I got mad at the trail. And and there was some swearing or something like that. But eventually I got back on the trail and like did my own vertical pushing up the hill. It was it was entertaining. That's all I have that has come to mind so far without keeping on rambling.
Sure. Yeah. No. Garrett, how was your navigation experience?
I actually did not have a GPS unit dedicated. I used my cell phone for the whole thing. Not recommended at all. I followed Ride with GPS, the app, and I would just like miss stuff because there was no cues constantly coming at me. So I would have to like look at it and kind of remember this, that, and the other. And then, things change year over year. A lot of trees fall down. There's lots of tiny little workarounds. I was definitely sold the idea that this was going to be incredibly hard to navigate. And that helped set the mindset that this is going to be hard. And I actually found it to be easier than what I played it up to be in my brain. There's definitely some moments where I was way off course, and I would usually just want to try and find my way in a forward progress back to the trail. And I almost always ended up making my situation worse and would have to backtrack regardless. So like this is something I use when we're backpacking or bikepacking or whatever. Is I typically, when I'm in a good mood, will just go back to where I saw a trail marker last and then reevaluate. That's I think something that was really important for me because the walls start to kind of close in fast. I was at the back, so there wasn't anybody behind me to come and figure out what was going on. So yeah, I would just typically go back, and a lot of those new trail markers you could see were making a big difference. You could see that there was like maybe a trail used to go that way, but that trail marker would set the course. And after last year, hopefully there's a little bit more of a beaten trail. But definitely that first to Chumalt, things were tough. I know right after that river, that was that I was bushwhacking for a while after that with my bike up a hill. And that's not fun when you're exhausted. But I think the effort, it's going a long way. I think that it's getting better year over year. I could tell that a lot of those markings were new and they were very helpful and reflective.
That's good. Okay.
For nighttime.
Yeah. That I know that the southern section is the hardest for us to maintain. There's just no mountain bike groups down there doing the work. We do organize trail parties, but there's a lot of trails. So that's one of the ones that are one of the areas that we can't really get to. Chris, anything else on navigation?
I'm susceptible to getting lost. And so there's a lot of redundancy for me. So like I've got a track on my watch. I've got a track on like my head unit. I've got the route downloaded on my phone on Gaia. And we were on the first day we were riding with this gal, and she ended up losing her only source of navigation. And luckily she was with other people, but like that is not a place that you want to lose your only source of navigation. Like she didn't have the route on her phone. Like she thought she had it on there, but then she looked and it wasn't working. So, I think this is a route that I would encourage you to like take it seriously, like double check, make sure the route is on your phone, make sure it's on your GPS unit, have a little bit of redundancy. Overall though, I agree with what Sarah and Garrett said. Like again, I'm susceptible to getting lost and turned around. Didn't really happen on this trip. Trail markers were really important. And there was just that one spot, the Cox Burn area, but you kind of could see where other people were going and you could spot the trail markers. So it wasn't too
bad. Great. Thanks. I'm curious. Did any of you bring paper maps as backup? No? No, I was just curious. I'd be surprised if you did, but
I think I thought about it. And I actually also had a problem. So I thought the route, this is the first time I ever had a problem with my Wahoo, but it just somewhere on the Fremont, going on that downhill section with no water, I was like listening to music and having the time of my life. And then all of a sudden my Wahoo was like, you're at the end of the route. Yay, you're finished. And it was fine. So I used my phone, and then once I had cell phone reception, I downloaded it in segments, and like it was okay. But yeah, just double checking things is good.
Right. Curious, we've got a little bit more time on this topic. And I don't know if any questions on navigation have come in. I know some other ones have come in. Garrett, you said you use your phone, and I know you can download the maps for when you don't have cell coverage. But just curious, what was the cell coverage like on the route? Were you guys able to get connections much?
It was fairly non-existent
Yeah.
for me. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah. Sorry. No. So my story is, I just assumed there would be no cell phone coverage. So it wasn't until that day that I think it was the third day for me where was it second? Yeah, third day where I had like the problem with my Wahoo, and it was like going down to the farm pond somewhere, like on that. I guess it's all downhill. So when I first lost the map, I was like, I'll check and see if I have cell phone. I had my phone in airplane mode since the beginning for 3 days. And I turned it on, and I was like, I have cell phone reception. That's crazy. So I mostly had my phone in airplane mode for the most part otherwise. So I don't know if I did have cell phone reception. But as a somewhat maybe funny story is, so that third day was the first time when I checked if I had cell phone reception. And then I had like all these assumptions about like who was in front of me and how far in front of me and who was behind me and how far behind me. So it wasn't until the third day that I was like, let's go on track leaders and see where people are. And everything was just like way different than I thought. Like I thought this person was in front of me, and then Chris and his friend were like 10 miles behind me. And I was like, I thought I left them in my dust like in day one. Anyways, so it was interesting, like having cell phone reception and then checking track leaders was entertaining.
Sarah, you mentioned Wahoo a couple of times. Can you explain what that is for folks?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty specialized bike computer. There's like an app that you can download on your phone that's the interface between like putting GPX tracks on it. It's kind of similar to, I lost it actually last fall. So I have a Garmin Edge now, and it's like a super simplified version of a Garmin. There's not too many options, so that I kind of like that. There's like way less navigation options and weird other fitness things that Garmin has. So it kind of just has like the basic of like how fast you're going. I think when you're training, you can like do heart rate and stuff, but it's like how fast you're going, time of day, moving time, things like that. So I always have a page where it says moving time, speed, distance ridden in the day. And then I'd have the other page I'd flip back between where it would have like the route that has like the little dotted lines that you follow. So.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. I had this question. I can see some questions in the chat about recharging your technology. Lots of options out there. What are you guys using? Chris, how about you start us off on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have it right here. Maybe. Yeah, so I have this like power bank. It's like a Nightcore 10,000 milliamp hour power bank. And I think I carried like this plus another giant one just to power my camera. So like I had way too much in terms of like power banks just because I have all these other electronics I was trying to keep charged. So that didn't really turn out to be an issue for me. But I think carrying something like this and then maybe turning off your phone instead of putting it in airplane, you probably could get away with just this and a GPS unit, something like the Garmin 1040 has pretty good battery life. And then there's also that Coros Duo that's come out recently that has really, I think, incredible battery life. I've never used it, but those are the options I would be looking at for like these really long routes with not a lot of places to recharge.
Gotcha. Thanks. Sarah, Garrett, any tips on that? What'd you guys use?
I use a power bank as well. Little tip that I learned a few years ago from somebody was if you look up your phone, you can see how big the battery is in it. So I think my iPhone is a 6,400 milliamp hour battery. So I know that if I get a 10,000 milliamp hour battery, it can charge it about 1.5 times. So I carried 2 of those, and that would give me, since I'd be navigating off my phone, maybe a charge a day for 5 days, whatever. So that's one of the things that I looked at to kind of determine how much power I wanted to bring on this. I knew there'd be less, especially for the very beginning, than other areas. And I also own a dynamo hub, but I did not bring it along on this particular trip. If anyone's never used a dynamo or they're thinking about using a dynamo, they work really well at higher speeds at like maybe 10 plus miles per hour. And it's going to be pretty tough for you to get 10 miles per hour on this trail at a consistent rate, enough to really affect or charge your devices. You're doing so much slow speed that you'd be trickle charging at best, and it probably wouldn't pay off in the long run.
Gotcha. Okay. Sarah?
And I also used a power bank. I've also used, like, in past trips, used like the solar panels, and I find they're a little like hard to like get them in the right position and kind of more hassle than they're worth. So I just use I think I had a 20,000 milliamp power bank, and that worked. I probably ran a little low because I had to charge my phone, my Wahoo. So pretty much after a full, like, that's one of the limitations of the Wahoo. So I think some of the newer Garmin's in particular, like, have solar recharge, which I have one now, and that's like the coolest thing. So I don't have to worry about charging it. So I had to charge the Wahoo, and then my Garmin InReach, I kind of always made sure it was like doing fine. And then my headlamp for my helmet. So I pretty much maxed out the 20,000. I was able to get a little bit of charge at the bike shop in Oak Ridge while we were hanging out for like 2 or 3 hours, and then that got me through the rest. So I made it the whole 10 days with just 20,000 milliamps and like recharging it for maybe a few hours.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah,
that was going to
it
be
was
one
a
of my
little
questions.
bit cutting it close. Yeah, I think it was that and the other circumstances where I was like, well, I'm not going to ride too much at nighttime anymore because I'll run out of batteries.
Right. So are there places to charge your devices or charge your power banks? Few and far between. Okay.
I know that I think like Chris, there was like a party in Chemult one night. So I guess you guys got a full recharge at a motel. But other than the shop in Oak Ridge, and the Mexican restaurant in Chemult, which I like tried to charge everything for like an hour and a bit. That was the only access. If you really needed to, you could find something at a store or whatever. But that was all I used.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thanks. We're going to keep on going. This is our next main topic before we get to open Q&A. By the way, we're not going to take a break. So if you need one, feel free to excuse yourself. So this topic is planning for food and water. Some days on the trail, food and water are readily available. Other days, finding food and water will become an obsession, especially in the southern section. The first 200 miles of the trail has no food resupply stops that are on the route and infrequent water opportunities. Plan on hauling at least 6 liters with you, and you'll definitely need to filter all the water that you find. The navigation files do include the location of water sources, but as they become more frequent farther north, you'll be crossing creeks quite a bit. Those locations haven't been mapped. The gravel route is a little bit easier to deal with lack of food and water in the southern section, just because it's a little bit more accessible to other things. And the website and user guide has detailed information about what is available at each resupply point. We've been getting a lot of questions on this topic. So, Garrett, I'd like to start off with you. How difficult was it for you to plan for food and water? What would you recommend to others so they don't end up running short or carrying around too much? What worked for you?
I went for water, I had 6 liters of storage on my bike total, which is quite cumbersome. It takes up a bit of space, and you'll definitely use that in the beginning of the trail, likely, unless you're faster or a little better at planning than I am. So I pretty much, any time I could get water, I would get water. And I'd spend the day before the night before I rode the day, I would look on the map and look at the water and check how some of my distances look. I think the longest water carry is 35 miles. And there's a nice spot to fill up right before that, and definitely keep an eye out for that. And I don't remember exactly what that spring was called, but it's right by Winter Rim. So I would just not pass until I got to Chemult. Courier Springs. That's right. Thank you, Chris. Until I got to Chemalt, I was filling up at any spot that I could and just erring on the side of caution, especially since it was so warm. And then in the very beginning, up to Chemalt is also the trickiest with food. So I carried 5 days worth of food to get me from Lakeview at the start of the trail to Paisley, and ended up, instead of going to Paisley, I went all the way to Chemalt on that 5 days. So that was a ton of weight. It was a ton of food. Everybody was weighed down at the beginning of the race just to try and get to Chemalt because there's a bit of a detour to get to Paisley. So I would definitely err on the side of caution when it comes to food until you get up towards Oak Ridge or beyond. And I definitely could see where the food was. It was just a matter of fitting it all into my bike to get from place to place. I definitely kind of anticipated having a higher daily mileage than I ended up having on this trail. So I was putting in some pretty long days and definitely coming really close to the end of my reserves by the time I did actually get to Schmaltz. So if you're going to plan on touring and going a little bit slower, definitely want to go over to Paisley. It's off trail, but I think it's worth it in the long run to save yourself a bit of a headache as you're getting your legs going for the trail. And then Chemalt, you get a good resupply. And by good resupply, I mean gas stations. So you should probably definitely know what you're eating out of a gas station. I like eating Frito bean dip and some Knorr packets and some things that you can get readily available, a couple hot dogs, that kind of stuff. So definitely next time you're in a gas station, take a look at what's available. And that's probably what you're going to see when you're on this trail, and get ready to eat some of that stuff. A lot of the other riders did not carry stoves. I did carry a stove with me amongst many other things that I didn't necessarily need. But I was cooking food and my bag system was all very heavy. So yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't have brought a stove the second time around. I would have actually just eaten ready-made meals that I bought from the gas station because a lot of times I was too tired to cook anyways. Once you get past Chemalt, things get a little bit easier. The food carries shorten up a little bit, and you're more in the 3-day range if you're putting on a pretty good pace. And I think that the interactive Ride with GPS map has a lot of information about kind of what would be available, so you can make plans accordingly. And in that first 2 days before you get to the Paisley Junction, maybe 3, you'll have a very good sense about the pace you're going to be putting on for the remainder of the trail. And you can make a decision, should I go to Paisley and resupply, or should I just carry on to Chemalt? So you have some options.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot there. The stoveless trip is intriguing to me because every ounce really matters. Chris, I wanted to ask you something. I remember from your video, I think I saw you and one other person trying to fill up a water bottle from like an irrigation pond with a bottle taped to the end of a long stick or something, or pole or something like that.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Not quite. So that was Paul. Paul's on the call. So shout out to you, Paul. Hey, I rode the trail with Paul, and we were just like stopped at this bridge, and he set his bottle down, and it fell into this like disgusting like algae infested water, and so then he's trying to get his bottle out. So that's
I
all
thought that was a resupply.
Yeah. No, that was not.
Okay.
That was not searching for water. Yeah.
Picked up so many of Paul's bottles because I was right behind Chris and Paul, and I just keep finding bottles.
Yeah, keep it right. Sarah, how did food and water work for you? What was your story?
Oh, yeah. So kind of similar to what Chris and Garrett said already. So the first 300 miles are the only part where you really need to be mindful of both of those things. For food, for that 300 miles, I brought 3 days worth of food, and then I was like a half day slower than I thought I would be, something like that. And so I did somewhat run out of food, but part of that was to making some very bad decisions about new kinds of food that I'd bring. So I brought some tortillas I was going to do Nutella and peanut butter like rolled up, but I did jam and peanut butter. And I had like 7 of those in like Ziploc bags somewhere in my seat pack. And after 2 days of like 90 degrees Fahrenheit, I don't know, they kind of started like that was like supposed to be my main like dinner food. And I think the jam went rancid. So don't do jam, but Nutella should be good. And then I also had like Paisley. I also had Paisley as like, I was like, all right, if I don't get to Paisley. I think it was like, 1:00 in the afternoon. The second day I was like, oh, I'm slower than, and I anticipate going. And so I should turn off to Paisley. And I ended up getting to and that's where like you cross the Chihuahuan River. I'm pronouncing it wrong, but that's okay. Yeah, I don't know. So I think it was like 5 p.m. But I was like, at that point I was in a great mood. So I was like, yes, river, went for a swim. And I was like, and then there was like Coca-Cola because Chip had left some stuff there. And there was like Coca-Cola and some other random snacks. So I drank the Coke, brought one to go. And then I was like, I'm just going to send it. Who needs food? And I ran out of food. But it turns out you don't need food. I mean, as long as you have water. So the last day heading into Chimalt was a little painful. I think I had one tortilla with Nutella and like at that point I didn't want to eat any. I had a jar of peanut butter and like the bottom end of it, but it wasn't very appetizing. But it was okay. You just go slow and you burn fat or something, and it works out fine. I had water. And then it was like the 35-mile section. So I also had 6 liters of water. I think I was usually at like 5 liters, and the only time I filled up for 6 liters was at Courier Springs. I was pretty anxious because all the sections leading up to that were way slower than I thought. And I was like, if the next 35 miles are like that, it's going to be close. And then someone else on the, I think it was 35 miles to Farmwell Pond. And then someone on the bus who had done it the year before, who won actually, what was his name? Kevin? So he was like, Farmwell Pond is terrible. Like, don't count on it. And I was like, I was counting on it. And then, so he's like, wait till like Jackson Creek. But it turns out, so I was able to filter water from Farmwell Pond. There was like a little corner, the algae was fine. But I think if I didn't stop there, I would have run out of water. It wouldn't have been that much further till Jackson Creek, but I would have run out of water. It was pretty hot. So, and then the other thing is, and this might change if like if it's like the single track version, because the route we did was a 2-track section from Courier Springs mostly. It skipped like that part that goes along the edge of the kind of the mountain cliff thing. So that would change things, but as it was, that section ended up being like the fastest. I remember looking at like my GPS and seeing I was going like 15 miles per hour, and I was like, well, this is amazing. It was like all downhill, and it got slow, and there's some bushes and some problems later. But yeah, that was the only section where just be extra mindful of making sure you have enough water.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. Chris, speaking of water, I was curious what you used for filtration.
I think it was either a platypus quick draw or like a bee free, and it ended up like getting kind of clogged. So those bee frees, like test them before you go. Like I probably should have just like got a new one right before we started. So Paul and I ended up getting a new one in Oak Ridge. Those things are amazing when they're new, but when they get jammed up, they're pretty annoying and frustrating to use. But yeah, if I was doing it again, I'd probably just start with a fresh bee free or platypus quick draw and call it a day.
Is the Be Free, is that a gravity fed one or any of these
Yeah,
pumps?
just like this, you just kind of like push on it. It's not really necessarily gravity fed, but it's like super fast.
So it's a
You're almost
pump,
like,
but
is it even working? Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody run out of water? Were there any like scary sections? I mean, I've had some major heat exhaustion from running out of water on bikepacking trips. That's my number one fear with this one. No
Definitely
issues?
the first day. I had I was pretty dehydrated the first day. It was just so hot. From the very start until I think I had 2 close calls that day, realistically. One of the waters that I skipped a tiny stream. I could have filled up a liter or a liter and a half there. I was near full, but not all the way. And I just thought there'd be more water sooner and I would cover more distance.
Mm-hmm.
But I did get pretty dehydrated because one of the ponds that was marked wasn't there. I ran into Chris at that spot. He was sleeping with Paul on the ground, usually. And there wasn't much there. It was kind of, if it was filterable, it was pretty disgusting. And I just pushed, and I was fully out of water by the time I got to camp and just cameled up before bed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There was a question, I had this too, in terms of like what your average mileage per day was. I know it varies, but in that southern section, what were you guys hitting?
So I responded to that, and I like the whole first 200 miles. It was like Chemult in 4 days, Chemult in 4 days, because I packed just enough to do that, and like I was stressed out every single day. But we ended up making it to Chemult at like Paul and I at the end of day 4 after like a long day. So I think on average we averaged about 50 miles a day, and then the pace really picked up after that, and things got a lot less stressful. But again, those 50 miles, like they were hard days for us. Like we were going until it was like getting dark and waking up pretty early. So obviously everyone's fitness is different, but yeah.
Right. Was there quite a bit of pushing in those southern sections?
I would say so for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that makes a difference. 50 miles, walking 50 miles is quite a bit different.
Yeah, and like some of it's like just blowdowns, right? So it's like
Right.
it's unavoidable. It's not just like it's too steep of a grade for me, even though there was some of that.
Right. Okay. Well, excellent. All right. Well, it's about 8 o'clock. We are moving into our open question and answer session.
Hey, Joe, can I pop
Yep.
off a couple of poll questions before we
Please.
get into there?
Yeah.
So I have I have two here. We'll pop off, and then a couple more for the end. So here's the first one.
And
Can I
again,
find
these are optional. Feel free to
out
answer.
where everybody's from? Yeah.
Yeah. If you do have, as you're reading these questions and answering them, if you do have questions, please start raising your hand so Jeffrey can get you all organized. We can just open it up. If we don't have any questions from participants, I have some canned ones, but hopefully we'll get people talking. Pretty much anything and everything, obviously, as long as it's respectful. Sorry, I guess I have to answer this question too. I'm part of the poll. All right, Jeffrey, who do we have up first for a question?
So I don't have a toolbar that allows me to see people raising their hand
Okay.
here. If you have a question, I would suggest just dropping it into the chat and we can roll that way.
Danny Childs has their hand up. So why don't we go with Danny first?
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually his buddy Mark. I'm curious about wildlife. What'd you guys run into in the wildlife, and were there any real serious threats?
Go, Sarah.
Oh, well, I was going to say no serious threats. So I think the first day was the highlight for me. So sometimes like that paved section after that really hot valley you cross coming up to like, I think there's like a couple springs. One of them that's a pile of mud. There's like a big number 4 on the road. So I saw a bear almost crossing the road, but then the bear saw me and decided to like casually walk back up the hill. So that was cool. At that point, I was waiting for Chris and Paul because I thought you guys were right. I did see you guys on the road. Yeah. So I was going to tell you guys that I saw a bear, and I kept going and I didn't see you guys for a while. And then I also saw a cougar on the second day,
Wow.
which I thought was like, I knew I could see it was a cat, and then it had like a really long tail. It was like up on a ridge somewhere after Moss Creek, after that spring where you have to, on the ridge, it's kind of windy. So that was cool. And then that was kind of all I remember. Probably might have been some other things, but that was the highlight.
I'm so sad.
I wasn't worried. Like no safety issues. Just some cool sightings.
We caught up to Sarah and she's like, "Oh, we just saw a bear," and I'm like, "What?" Like, and so like Paul and I saw nothing. Like we saw Garrett and Sarah and Patrick. Like we didn't see any creatures. I don't remember anything standing out. So that's unfortunate.
Any poison oak or other biological hazards that you need to be warned about? Nothing. There is a lot of poison oak around Oak Ridge and around the not in the river valleys, but through there. I would say poison oak is probably pretty prevalent throughout the route. If you haven't had the pleasure of experiencing it, I would not suggest it. Any other hands up? I think I saw Lorena's hand up.
Yeah, I was curious to know about some gear tips for dealing with the mosquitoes, and maybe some from the panel of what that was like. I live in the desert, and so going into this, that's my biggest fear.
I'll give some initial reaction. So kind of by like Waldo Lake is where I feared the mosquitoes, and it actually turned out to be not that bad. Paul and I did bring head nets though, and there was kind of a lake in that Windy Lakes area where the mosquitoes were pretty like voracious. Um, in retrospect, I wish I would have taken the time to like spray my clothes with like permethrin or something in advance. I was happy to have the head net. It weighs nothing. It weighs nothing, Garrett. It was nice to have just to like keep the mosquitoes off your face. But overall, like it didn't turn out to be a huge problem. I was wearing like a long sleeve shirt though, like a sun hoodie. So I think wearing a sun hoodie, permethrin, have a hood on, that kind of keeps your upper body covered. Bring a head net just in case. And I think that's probably what I would advise.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I also had a head net, which I used once. I think I might have made it. I think I kind of purposely planned to not go through Windy Lakes or Tipamangos like at dusk. So I purposely like camped early one night so that I wouldn't be in Windy Lakes like when at nighttime. And then I also sprayed my clothing with permethrin. But outside of that one section, I didn't notice mosquitoes at all.
Really? That's okay. Excellent. Good to hear. I think that, obviously it depends on the time of year, but I've been almost carried away at Waldo Lake a few times, so I know that it can be bad.
Hey, Joe, we got a good question here from Corey Mack.
Yeah, please. Go ahead, Corey. Or maybe we can't unmute Corey.
Yeah, I can
sure
ask that for him. Does anyone know how late in the season the Cultus Lake and Lava Lake stores are open? Okay.
I would think Labor Day at least. Chip, do you have any notion on that?
I would guess they're into October. Yeah, they're tourist spots.
Cool. All right. And then we've got another question from Jahan Dolman, and I just lost it. Hang on. Can you speak to any navigational issues and food water resupply options on the gravel route?
Yeah, Chip, could you speak to that at all? I know that no one else has done the gravel route yet.
Yeah, there's a user's guide for the gravel route. You can find it on our website. And it doesn't have a lot of the water stops beyond the first 200 miles, but all the food stops are there. And so I think it's going to be an easier route to plan for food and water than the trail route. For one thing, you'll be going at a more predictable pace each day. And then I think there is more water on the gravel route in Southern Oregon.
Okay, thanks, Chip. We did have a question while I have you unmuted. Any idea? This is from Clint Harris. Any idea how many annually ride the route south rather than north, like starting from Hood River?
I think either way would be great. You do end up at a higher spot going north to south. The endpoint's about 7,000 feet. Hood River is at sea level, but there's just a lot of elevation gain throughout the route anyway, so you probably wouldn't notice.
Do you know if many people do it north to south?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So one. I imagine that makes the getting back to Lakeview a bit of a challenge.
I think there's a good reason to go south to north, and that is you end up at my hometown, Hood River, wonderful place to end a trip like that.
We've been getting a lot of questions. This is for the panel about equipment. Hardtail, full suspension. Garrett, was it you on the drop bars last year?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you guys speak to the equipment and maybe not in generalities, but more like what tips might you have?
We could start off by giving a few handy hints of what not to do. I was riding a drop bar 29er fully rigid bike. It had 2.6-inch tires. 2.6s are awesome. A lot of float for some of the sand and absorb some of that impact, but I would definitely not ride that bike ever again on this trail, even for a short period. Suspension, little squish, helps a lot. Definitely a hardtail at the minimum, maybe a full suspension. Whatever gives you the most confidence, because you're going to need it, because you're going to be smoked and you're going to be riding some technical stuff. So whatever bike you feel the most confident on is really important. Yeah, so the drop bars and that kind of stuff. As far as gear, I packed for probably an expedition like trip that might have taken years. I had way too much stuff. So being very critical of the things that you are bringing is pretty key, because you're going to pick your bike up at least 5 times a day. And that's on a good day. Can be as many as 100 times a day. I had to lift that bike a lot, and I thought about my choices very frequently. And I also thought it would be a bit colder at night. And every year is different. Take that into account. But I brought like a 30-degree mummy bag, and I could have brought a 40. I brought a down jacket, and I don't think I really needed that either. And I was pretty hot most of the time. But really be critical of anything you think you might not need. Time use versus time carried is something I thought about quite often. So a lot of the things I didn't use very often, but I carried them all day, every day. So having a light bike and something that you're very confident riding is pretty key, because you're going to be real tired.
Yeah, I bet. I bet you'll be really tired. Sarah, you had answered a question about a tent or a bivy in the chat. Could you just share that with folks?
Oh yeah, sure. So I think I kind of signed up for the race Grand Depart, and to challenge myself. I didn't think I was going to be super fast or anything, but I think in the back of my mind, I secretly wish I was like Lael Wilcox or something like that. But then I love sleeping, and then as soon as it's after midnight, I'm like, I'm riding all night. Who does that? So I really like sleeping, and it was a longer route too. If it's a shorter 3 or 4 day route, sometimes I'll take a bivy, but I just think for a longer route, making sure you have a sleep set up to make sure that when you are sleeping, you're going to sleep good was something that I thought was important. So for that, I brought a small tent, nothing fancy, actually a Mountain Equipment Co-op tent. So probably not the highest quality ever, but it worked fine. And then one thing that I thought, and I was really glad I brought it. So I brought I usually I have a dry bag on the front of my bike, which is fine for a lot of bike packing routes, but especially for the hike a bike, you are lifting your bike over logs, and you're pushing your bike up over technical terrain. So the lighter that the front of your bike in particular is, the better. And I thought that might be something. So I brought this light Dyneema bag, nothing special, but it was enough so that I could just take the dry bag off, because I was carrying a tent. So it was had my tent and everything there. And just throw it in the bag just for the hike a bike. And then on the downhills or the gravel parts, I could reattach the dry bag. So I definitely recommend either having a backpack, just recommend finding a setup so that you don't have a lot of weight on the front of your bike.
All right. So certainly helps on the technical squirrely parts when you got a heavy front end. Chris, anything to add to this?
I'll just say, if I had to recommend a bike, it would be a hardtail with 120 mils front suspension and a dropper post, and go fairly light. I think it's the right balance of you can have fun on the single track and get kind of rowdy, but you can be efficient on some of the smoother, flatter sections. So for me personally, that's just the most fun bike. But I think to Garrett's point, the bike that you're really comfortable riding is probably the right answer. Just know that there are some sections which are pretty chunky. So just be sort of prepared for that.
Right. And speaking of those chunky sections, I know sort of the general rule with bike packing is you're hiking about 10% of the time. How much hike a bike was there? Were you guys quite a bit? Was it oppressive?
Like I think in the first 200 miles, like it felt like wow, like we are moving really, really slow. And I put in the chat, like there was a day that Paul and I were doing Yamsy, and like in the first 10 hours, we'd average like 2.5 miles an hour. And it's just like, how are we going so slow? So I think after that, though, after you get through past Chemult, there's really not that much hike a bike. There's like one sandy section, but it doesn't even really register. It doesn't stand out to me. So, yes, in the first 300. After that, I don't remember much. Garrett, Sarah, do you guys remember it differently?
Yeah, I don't remember anything after Chemult. It was just felt like smooth sailing. I will say there was like a couple points towards somewhere around Gunnison, like the last day, like in the hood tier. There was some very short sections of some down trees, but it was just like one. But I think I had PTSD, and when I saw, I was like, no. So like nothing, but it was more just like I was tired, and I was like, oh, I hope this doesn't end up being like the Cox Mountain Pass or anything like that. But yeah, I don't remember. In fact, it was kind of a cool contrast. Like once we got to trails where there was other mountain bikers, whoa, that was weird. Like seeing all these tire tracks of people just out for like day rides, that was like civilization. It was interesting.
I bet. Chip, I don't know if we've had anybody raising their hand. A couple of questions on the chat we can get to. Question from Eric Hansen. What were your favorite sections of the trail on the route?
I think for me that like one of the days that stands out a lot was the day after Chemult, and that was just partly because there was a lot of stress about getting to Chemult, and those sections were really hard. And that day afterwards, you go through these windy lakes, and so there's these beautiful alpine lakes, and so Paul and I are like, dude, let's go swimming, and so we're like jumping in all the lakes, and it felt like the first time where it's like, okay, we can like kind of relax a little bit, right? And like we're like enjoying ourselves, and it doesn't feel like we're just struggling to make miles so that we can get to Chemult and not run out of food. So that was like a really cool section for me. Yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think
your favorite section?
Yeah, it was the same. After I got to Chemult, I don't know, I loaded up on way too much food, and I was like, I could take forever to get to Oak Ridge, and like I'd totally be fine. I went swimming in Summit Lake. I rinsed my shirt in the lake, and took like a 2 hour. It was fun. And then the only thing is though, there's that long down I forget what the William Fork section or something. And the only thing is like, it's like super awesome downhill, but there are some uphills, and it's kind of more uphill than you would expect for the like elevation profile. So I think towards the end of that night, like that day, once you're like riding along the river, getting close to a lot of like where all the campgrounds are, I think I was just a little tired and kind of was like, I wish it was all downhill. But yeah, that day was definitely like one of the highlights for me.
Yeah, I think it's the wrong sport for that. Garrett, how about you? What was your favorite sections, would you say?
I had a lot of really awesome parts. In hindsight, I really liked the section to Chemult, but at the time, I know that I was really suffering. So I guess that's just some type 2 fun for you. I loved a lot of the campsites that I had. I feel like I had some of the more unique campgrounds and camping locations overall of all my bike packing on that trail as a whole. I loved the portion south of Sisters. As we were making our way into Sisters, that was a really fun group ride that I really enjoyed, and the trail was like going for the first time in a while, it felt like, and things were coming together. And then another really high tier spot, other than the mosquitoes, was the Waldo Lake section. I think I was just feeling it and really enjoying the scenery. And Oregon's beautiful, but man, is it beautiful back there. And other than the mosquitoes, it's stunning. So I had a lot of really big highlights, and I think so much of that trail I would have I'd be happy to ride again.
So all three of you had mentioned the trail coming into Chemult, which you also said was the hardest portion of it. So you're just kind of sick and twisted that way? Sounds like?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to verify. You don't need to be sick and twisted to do it, but I guess it helps. Danny Childs has a question. Danny, you want to fire away? If we can unmute you.
Yeah. Hey, a question about if you guys were going to divide this up into like 3 years. Let's say you wanted to do just one section over the summer. Can you guys give some suggestions on like maybe like 3 different segments that you might do over the course of 3 years that might be kind of more ideal?
I think the way that I was just gonna my default response is I think the segments as there. So I guess there's I already forgot what the southern one is, but then there's the Willamette tier, the Deschutes tier, and the Hood tier. And I think the way those are divided up make a lot of sense. If you wanted to do a longer one and kind of experience, at least what we experience is like one of the harder parts. Like you could do Lakeview to Oak Ridge, maybe, and add like that first part. Like that kind of felt like the most epic part to me. Like that's the part that I remember the most. And maybe it was because I was just tired for the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would say I'd be thinking about what you're looking for. If you want something that's a little bit more chill, a little closer to civilization, or then maybe like the area around Sisters Bend, like that's gonna be better for you. If you're looking for like more single track, like fun but not like pushing your bike and dealing with blowdowns, then maybe the Hood tier is the right option for you, and like you wind up in Hood River, which is cool. And then to Sarah's point, if you're looking for like an epic, like I want to struggle a little bit, then do the Fremont tier. So I think about what you're looking for and what you want to get out of the trip, and then maybe I think to Sarah's point, the way the tiers are divided up is a pretty reasonable way to think about it.
Yeah. Okay. Chip, do you have any wisdom to share on that topic?
I think the first 300 miles to Oak Ridge kind of sets itself up as a nice adventure on the harder side. The next 200 miles are pretty easy, and then the final 200 are kind of moderate. So it all depends what you're looking for. There are some pretty hard sections within the northern 400 miles. These were off limits to riding last year because of the fires, but this year they will be open, and they're good and hard, but there's ways to get around them. In fact, all of the hard sections of trails throughout the Oregon Timber Trail, you can get around them if it's just too much for you, or you just don't think yourself as much of a trail rider. You can, there's lots of logging roads out there, and we've mapped those out for you for a lot of those places. You can find them on the website. We call them bypasses. And so you can keep them in your back pocket if you just find yourself overwhelmed, and just go around Mount Yamsey Mountain rather than up and over. That kind of strategy.
Great, thanks. All right. I don't know if anyone has any questions that they want to ask. I'm not seeing any.
We've got a couple more.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey. Can you tee one us up for us?
Yeah. So first off, Garrett, I want to go back to one. Garrett, somebody was asking if you sleep hot or cold.
Hey, I definitely sleep hot.
Okay.
But I don't even think it got much below 40 or 50, 45 degrees at night. Maybe the other riders could speak to that as well, to give you kind of a reference of how cold it got overall. I'm a pretty warm sleeper overall.
Yeah, and I can just add to that a little bit. Expect everything. As Sarah mentioned at the beginning of this, during their race, there was a heat wave that started. Could very easily be gone the other direction, and at 7,000 feet, you could be awfully cold. Jeffrey, were there other questions? I've got a
Yeah,
couple here, but
we do have a couple more. There's one from Sean Trahan, who says, how many days are needed to accommodate for each tier if ridden individually?
so we said about 4 days for the Fremont tier, right? Isn't that the start to Chemult?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in there, I think. Chip, any insight on that?
Well, they were kind of going at race pace, so 6 days to Oak Ridge was pretty ambitious, and then 11 days overall. But that was without a lot of the hard sections up north, the trail sections as part of the race. So I think overall you'd be hard pressed to do it under 14 days, the whole thing. And then I think 7 days to Oak Ridge might be a reasonable first half.
Okay.
And then we've got another one, Joe, which is Danny was asking, what are the major EMS services, or rather, where are they absent? And I'd like to tag on to that from my through hiking days of, did anybody carry a satellite, a mini or anything?
Yeah, go ahead, Seth. Or Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think to register with the race, I think you actually were supposed to have a satellite thing. If you actually, I think maybe it was optional. I don't know, but yeah, I had a SOS device that had tracking on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did too.
Any? Go ahead. Eric. Sorry.
The iPhones, newer iPhones, if you carry an iPhone, has an SOS feature in the United States that you can call for emergency help on GPS without cell phone service as well. But I do know that someone did have to use it last year, and they were rescued and taken to a hospital. It is an option, but I think highly advised that you have some type of inReach or something to bail yourself out, because there's not going to be a lot of people around to help you out without satellite.
I did have a question about the technical sections of the trail. Like, are there any like scary sections? Any like risky, like maybe I should walk this section, or was it all pretty much pretty rideable?
I mean, I'm a pretty mediocre mountain biker, and there was a few sections where I'm like, yeah, it's not worth risking like trying to get rowdy on this, like just really like chunky rock gardens. So yeah, there was like a few spots where I got off and walked for sure.
Yeah.
Garrett,
I'd say every day there's something that could definitely ruin your trip.
Mm-hmm.
if you're going too fast, or maybe being a little complacent. And it is pretty serious mountain biking every day in some capacity that I experienced. At least on a fully rigid bike, I had a lot of sections where I was like, yep, that's not me. I'm going to just go around.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Anything break on the bikes? You guys have any mechanical issues or anything like that?
No mechanical. Oh, go ahead, Garrett.
No, you go, Sarah.
Okay. Well, I was going to sort of answer. Well, so the short answer is no, but someone, and I put an answer in the chat, someone asked about dropper, no dropper, and then it kind of plays into the technical trails. So I had done the smoke and fire with like a big seat pack with my seat up, and there was like lots of downhill single track, and it's kind of cool in a way. You know, kind of different. You like put your weight more on the front, and like because you can't. So I don't know. I was looking forward, like it was fun, but it definitely is harder on your upper body if you don't have a dropper, because you just to like kind of you can't move the rest of your body on like either side of the seat post as much. So the point where I really regretted not having a dropper was the last day of like coming down from Gunnison Ridge into whatever that town with all the orchards was. And so there's a lot of switchbacks. Yeah, so the tight switchbacks, doing tight, steep switchbacks without a dropper when you're tired, that I just would like ride straight, get off my bike, turn the bike, go. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always kind of scratching my head as to whether to use a dropper, because I have had one fail on the ride, and if that happens, then that makes for a miserable experience. I guess the other question I would have is flats or clipless. What do you guys use?
Flats.
Flats.
Sarah?
I would have clips.
Yeah, clips.
Clipped in. It's good for the pedaling and the uphill, I think.
You're right.
That's why Sarah was always in front of me. That's why.
If only I had clipless pedals.
Right?
Right.
My front rack did break on the last, like, I had two days left and my front rack broke. So that sucks. But luckily I always schlep a backpack just to carry all this other crap that I bring along the trail, and so I could just throw all my stuff in that bag. But that was the only real mechanical that I had.
Gotcha. I did want to get back to a question. Andrew Bauman had a question about would you have been comfortable with a puffy jacket and down pants instead of a sleeping bag? I've got my answer. What do you all say?
I personally wouldn't want to do it, but you know yourself better and like how you sleep, Garrett.
I like to get into a sleeping bag. I love that feeling of just like tucking myself in for the night. So I think I'm going sleeping bag.
Yeah, I'm also, I like being really comfortable at nighttime for sleeping and just like good quality sleep, prioritizing good quality sleep.
Yeah, me personally, I'll carry a tent in a bag and take the weight because I want to have a shelter to go into. Well, we're about out of time.
Hey, Joe, before we jump off,
do.
I just want to get a read, like a short little open-ended question to find out what other topics people would love to hear in an open house event like this. So launch that one out there.
As you're filling this out, like I said, this is our first one of these. We thought of it because, thinking about riding the trail, it's like, wouldn't it be nice to be able to talk to people that have done it before? So that was the intent of this open house. We had 150 people registered for this one. I think 50 people showed up, but still has a lot of attention. So if there's other topics, other things you want us to cover, please let us know, especially if you want to get more into the weeds on things like very, very specifics about, say technology or food and water. Please let us know either on this chat or you can send us a message on the website. I just want to conclude some things as you're filling this out. Let me close this. Again, thanks everyone for coming. We did record this video. We'll post it on a website and social media accounts in case you want to revisit it. We have another open house, basically the same format, but that's going to be on the 24th. You're welcome to attend. Again, same basic questions, but there might be some different information that's shared. There might be a lot of questions that we didn't get to. We are logging all the questions that we get, and we'll update our own information based on the questions as time allows on the website and our FAQ page. Again, if you can support the Oregon Timber Trail Alliance, either through donations or trail work, we'd certainly appreciate it. I think that's about it. Again, thanks you all. Thank everyone for coming, and looking forward to seeing you on the trail. Thanks for our panelists, Sarah, Chris, Garrett, and Chip. Really appreciate your time and late night, Sarah and Jeffrey, to stay on. So thanks a lot for that.
Hey, Joe, one last thing here. We're going to shoot for within about 72 hours of this event to get the full recording up onto our YouTube channel. So it'll be in posterity.
Excellent. All right. Well, groovy. Well, thanks everyone. We'll see you next time. Appreciate your time.